Thank you very much for having me here and giving me the opportunity to present not only our organization, but also give you the insight into voluntary product certification and what's going on compostable products, not only in Europe, but around the globe. The contents of the presentation will be a short introduction to our organization and the introduction to the voluntary certification systems which are out there. A little bit more insight into the certification body, how we work and how we must work to develop reliable certification systems, how we develop these certification systems and how you could participate in that, and a short overview over our certification marks. The open questions will be shifted to the end of the presentation because I will have a second part which is going into more detail onto compostable products and political frameworks. So CERTCO is a certification organization based in Berlin, Germany, and we are do certification of products, persons, services, enterprises and systems, and we also do some registration which are self-declarations in accordance with the DIN collective marks. We were founded in 1972 by the German Institute of Standardization. In 1995, the German government decided to liberalize the certification and testing market. So our company was renamed to CERTCO and released from the German Institute of Standardization for reliability reasons, because making standards on the one hand and certifying against the same standards on the other hand, the same organization is not very reliable. And in 2005, our shares were sold to TÜV Rheinland, which is one of the big German service providers for industrial support, certification, testing and inspection. Our head office is located in Berlin. We have some people still working and are located in Cologne, in the former capital Bonn. We have 2 salespersons located in Shanghai and Taiwan, and we do have a testing laboratory for personal protection equipment located in Nuremberg for eye protection. Currently, we employ 63 people. When I started in 2012, we were 32, so we doubled our staff within the last 6 years. And we have around about 5,500 customers at the moment, serving 15,000 certificates worldwide. In these countries, labeled here in blue, and I think we should add Alaska as well to the United States. What do we do? What is our background? Our competence in transparency is that we document safety and quality of new and certified products, services and systems as well. We also always refer to national, continental or international standards and other publicly available specifications. And we claim ourselves neutral, independent, competent. Claiming is not enough, as you might know. We are accredited by our national accreditation body, DAX, according to the standard 17065 for product certification bodies, 17025 for testing labs, and 17021 for inspection bodies. We are a notified body of the European Commission. This means we are also allowed to give, for example, certifications according to the European Timber Regulation, which might be of interest for your forestry department. And we are empowered as a certification body to wear the European key mark logo, and we also are the main office of the administration and the management of the key mark on behalf of the European standardization body SEN, so we accredit certification bodies for that. And of course, we're certified against the regular standards, you know, quality management, information. Could you please turn your mics off online? Thank you. Information security management, of course. Digitalization is a big topic at the moment, and information security, everything you send to us is as safe as it can get. And of course, environmental management, etc. So we have a wide portfolio. I don't go into too much detail. We do heating and air conditioning, environmental field, which I will talk today about, solid fuels, barbecues, would also be of interest for your forestry department, eye protection, construction products, international approvals like market access services, for different regions in the world, like Russia, Near East, Saudi Arabia, Africa, and we also do some person and service certifications. In the environmental field, we certify bio-based products, biodegradability in soil, which is a new standard which came up within the European fertilizer regulation. Home and garden composting, of course, industrial composting, which I will talk about today. Additives in accordance with the compostability standards, sustainable biomass in accordance with ISCC and the Renewable Energy Directive in Europe, and PDFC and FSC, both chain of custody and forest management. So what is certification? Some people think certification is a nice piece of paper with a stamp and a logo on it. Yes, that's the outcome of that process. But certification is a third-party attestation for the fulfillment of specified requirements related to products, processes, etc. This is defined in the ISO standard series 17000. The steps in the certification process are that factory production control or product testing of the manufacturer by a recognized testing lab from the CERTCO is proven, and then B, as independent third-party certifier, do the conformity assessment according to the relevant documents and the requirements based on these test reports or inspection reports. And then we issue the certificate and, which is the second step, grant the right to use the respective certification mark with a registration number which is individual. And normally we do regular surveillances. It depends on if it's product or system certification. For system certification we go out for audits, we inspect production control, and for product certifications we send in samples to the respective testing labs. So this is a generic certification process. Someone applies for certification, goes to the testing lab or goes to the CERTCO first, and we tell them which tests are necessary. They do send in the respective test reports and we do the assessment and grant the license. Certificates are published online. We do have an online database, which is we can use like Google search. Search for companies, standards, product names, registration numbers, etc. And it's a daily updated database, so if you don't find a certified product there, it's not certified. If it's online, the certificate is still valid. You will find, so you can see here in the top left, registration number. You can also switch the language to English in the database. You see the respective company name with the contact address. You see the respective logos which they are certified for, certification schemes and standards, and also which products are certified on this registration number. That's the important thing, that you can see which products are certified and not only that the company is certified. Each product type is certified separately. And the types, I mean, cups are different than lids, shopping bags are different than waste bags, cutlery is different than tableware, etc., etc. For some certification systems, you also provide technical data online, but not for these compostable products. So what are the benefits? Third-party certifications show the proof of quality of tested and evaluated products. They establish consumer confidence on a B2C level and give the aid in decision-making, not only for private people, but also for organizations and maybe even states, I don't know. They show the compliance with applicable standards and guidelines. They are tested neutrally, independently, and the transparent certification process, every document is given online and free for download, and shows what the testing and certification requirements are. The last point on this slide is also very important. If you find a logo which is not online, please write an email to us or call us, and we will go also after misuses of the mark. Sometimes falsified certificates are out there, they are just changing company names or things like that. And if you're unsure if products are really certified, contact us and we'll check that. And if these companies do falsifications or still using the mark without permission, then we go after them, even legally, and you can find them on our blacklists later on. The close connection from the CERTCO to TÜV Rheinland and the German Institute of Standardization. TÜV Rheinland is an international leading service-oriented group, shown over about 2 billion euros, about 20,000 employees worldwide, 10,000 of them in Germany. And we can use the international TÜV Rheinland network group for the benefit of our customers, like testing partners, competences, etc. And this TÜV Rheinland is present in 65 countries on every continent. German Institute of Standardization is an international leading standardization partner with a long tradition from 1917. They are the German notified body for working on standards on national, continental, and international level. And DIN has about 32,000 experts in more than 70 standardization committees throughout Germany. Most of them are coming from industry, or NGOs, or testing labs, or certifiers, etc., etc. Yeah. So DAX is the National German Accreditation Body, which we are accredited with in accordance with 17065 standards for product certification. DAX is regularly auditing us based on those standards out there, and they assess our management system, the technical competence of our staff, take into account laws and relevant standards. If standards are updated, we have to improve our processes. DAX participates in an international comparable level of performance. This means on continental level in Europe and on international level, the accreditation bodies also do discuss about, with each other about the interpretation of accreditation rules. And DAX still monitors the continuing compliance by regular inspections, also not only with us, but also with the accredited labs. Here comes the part why I'm here in New Zealand in the first place. Team CERTCO is only allowed to accept test reports for certification with individually approved testing laboratories. So it's not enough if you're an accredited lab. So we must be convinced that you are doing the right testing and you have the competence to do those technical scopes we need for certification. For this, we work together with around 150 testing labs worldwide. And the recognition of these labs is based on the ISO 17025 standard. The demonstration of competence can be based on a valid accreditation of the management system and the technical scope. Management system only, then we do an audit for technical scopes. Thank you for joining. Can you please turn off your mic? Thank you. Thanks. And that is not. Is it turned off? Hopefully. Okay. And if the lab is not accredited at all, we do a full auditing scope based on the management system and the technical scope which we require for the test reports. We also do regular inspections with these testing labs. And we ask them to participate in round-robin tests and meetings of exchange of experience that the labs can discuss with each other if there are some problems coming out with the testing standards or with some kind of products we certify. Our inspectors, like me, do inspect the respective labs based on our own training. In some specific areas, we also do have some auditors from external experts, which are also approved by us. And we need to have known the product and production-related knowledge, and of course experience in the respective scope. And of course knowledge of the specific standards and other relevant documents. and we proved our competence individually with an external person certification in accordance with ISO 9001 and in compliance with ISO 19011 for auditing. So how do we develop certification schemes? Or what does our schemes comprise? Sorry for they comprise, of course, a test criteria, which you can find in the regular standards, but that's not enough. Sometimes we also have certification conditions, which we use for respective fields, like compostable products, definition of product types, which I explained earlier, bags, cups, lids, etc. Subtypes, which are small bags, big bags, medium-sized bags, how the sampling is performed, how the mark can be used, how long the certificate is valid, etc. It's all outlined in the certification scheme, which is publicly available free of charge. Other further technical requirements are also stated therein, which are not mentioned in the respective standards. For example, product design, the duration of verification testing, the frequency of verification testing, which amount of testing, etc. And these certification systems can easily be adapted if standards change or if requirements change. Here you can see the connection between, on the left side, the standardization committees for national, international, or continental level, and the certification committees on the right hand, it's in CERTCO. On the left side, you see that standards are made from standardization committees, but of course, information interchange takes place between standardization and certification committees. I'm also participating in 3 or 4 standardization committees in Germany. So there's information exchange, which can go directly into the certification scheme. And as a result of that, the certification can be established. How we develop these schemes? Internally, we do have, it's like if you're product development from industry, you know that. We have informal meetings to discuss the content. What is your product looking like? What do you want to do with that? You make a business approval on that. You check what is the market, what are the costs for development, etc. We have an internal assessment of the project, like market research and calculation. And then we decide that it makes sense to develop such a certification scheme. Alternatively, of course, we would have something like cooperation agreement with existing associations. And then we establish the certification committee together with interested parties. Here is the part where external partners are coming in, like testing labs, manufacturers, experts, NGOs, etc., which are sitting together, developing the scheme, developing the rules for certification, which are making sense not only for the industry, but also for us, of course. In the meantime, we develop all relevant documents for certification for our internal processes according to the quality management system, like a scheme, application form, schedule of fees, etc. And also the internal process, how we start the procedures, how we do all the things until the certificate comes out. And after that, we have the product release, as you know from industry, and the implementation of the system with all the internal procedures, layout, ID cards, etc., and the publication of the scheme and the market launch. So our certification marks are looking like this: the DIN geprüft marks. DIN geprüft means DIN tested. DIN geprüft shows tested and monitored conformity with respective standards and further requirements from the certification scheme. In the middle, you can see for special product groups, like we have it, the products are introduced today. The mark is supplemented by explanatory addition, like biodegradable in soil, industrial compostable, bio-based, home compostable, etc. And sometimes we also have DIN Plus certification systems like wooden pellets. It shows not only compliance with the respective standards, but with additional quality characteristics mentioned in the certification scheme, so that it can be upgraded from DIN to DIN Plus. I don't want to go into detail with the deep collective marks. These marks are for self-declarations for yourself, like if you're a translation service or so, according to an ISO standard, you can register as a translation service. It's not interesting for today. Here comes the interesting part. We also do commission certifications. And in CERTCO, like you can see on top left, the compostability mark including bioplastics, you know the Australian one from the ABA, with the AS4736 on it. We do certificates for FSC, Forest Stewardship Council, and PFC, as I mentioned earlier, and some other certification marks you can see at the bottom, like the bottom right, German Association of Engineers. So how do we see ourselves? We see ourselves as a connection between manufacturers, associations, testing partners, and end users, and also consumers. We hope we keep the things going, that certification systems can support not only the industry, but the whole value chain, with the relevant logos and marks, and proof that these products show compliance with respective requirements. You can see on our website more information on that. You can see in the middle right, on the right-hand side, database. If you click on there, you can search. You can find our full text search database. If you have certification ideas which are not implemented yet, you can also contact us. You can develop certification schemes. More information can be found there. So thank you very much for your attention for this part one of the presentation. Open questions will shift to the end, right?
Up to you. What do you prefer? Yeah.
No, I'm the flow. Okay. Okay. Second part is about the certification of compostable products. What is it and how does it work? Let's skip that. Third-party certification. If there's third-party certification, there's also second-party certification and first-party certification. And first-party certification normally is a self-declaration of the respective manufacturers or suppliers. In the environmental field, there's even a standard for that. This is ISO 14021, environmental labeling and self-declaration. Let's say if you claim yourself industrial compostable, the requirements are stated in that standard how to prove that. Then there's second-party certification, which is certification by the user or by the contract partner, for example, supplier rating in the automotive industry. But also if testing labs prove that their test results show compliance with the respective standards, which is also possible, but it's forbidden in Germany, for example. DAX is not allowing that. And then what I mentioned earlier, third-party certification by independent third-party like certification bodies accredited. We also had that. So we started in 1997 with the seeding certification system from European Bioplastics, which was developed by European Bioplastics and us. It was back then based on an old German standard series, DIN 54900, and applied the EN 13432 standard after its release in the year 2000. And you can see the registration number 2 for products is still valid. This company is certified for more than 20 years with the same product, or with some developed products. This is a waste bag based on starch-based compostable products, whatsoever it is. They are in the market for more than 20 years with this product. And since then, we certified more than 1,000 products, intermediates, and materials. I also showed you that. We'll go into a little bit more details with these certification systems we have here. Where your product is located, you will find on this graphics. If you're into seed quality, agriculture, packaging, forestry, etc., you can see a combination of possibilities of being certified of the respective product which you have, like bio-based, wooden pellets, recycled content, industrial compostability, home compostability, and biodegradability in soil. So for bio-based products, we certify with the DIN mark in accordance with the ASTM, CENTS, and ISO standard. The test requirements are radiocarbon testing, of course, and with a minimum requirement of 20% bio-based carbon content, and the volatile solids content must be more than 50%. These standards do not have pass-fail criteria. So the pass-fail criteria for certification are given by the certification scheme. At the bottom, you can see the bio-based logo by Dutch standardization organization NEN. It is based on the EN 16785 Part 1 standard, and this is the first bio-based standard which has pass-fail criteria. Industrial composting. We offer also the DIN mark for industrial compostability. It's a little bit different than the CE mark because some other standards to apply. And the basis of the certification are the EN standards, which is mandatory for certification, and all the other standards, ASTM, ISO, Australia, can apply as well. The testing scope is chemical characterization. There's a list of heavy metals given in the standard with the maximum usage or maximum pollution with these metals. A biodegradability test under industrial composting conditions. The requirement is 90% pass level after a maximum of 6 months. The earthworm test applies for the Australian standard only as a part of the ecotoxicity testing setup. Compostability is tested according to disintegration with the ISO 16929 standard, also with 90% pass criteria after 12 weeks. And a plant toxicity test according to the OECD 208 guideline, which is known for REACH, for example, if you're into safety data sheets, with the compost remainings of that respective product. Home composting can be certified as well. There are 2 standards at the moment out there. One from Australia and a pretty new standard from 2015 from France. The scope of testing is pretty much the same. Only that the test duration is doubled to 12 months for biodegradation and 6 months for disintegration, and the test setup is performed at ambient temperatures. A new standard came up, as I mentioned earlier, the EN 17033 for biodegradable mulching films for agriculture and horticulture. This standard was especially designed to certify products like mulching films only, but materials and intermediates can also be certified as well. The European Commission gave a new fertilizer regulation out there last year, where they recommend the use of biodegradable mulching films, and I'll tell you a little bit more later on. As you see, the testing is also pretty similar. Chemical characterization with the metal limits, biodegradability in soil, with a maximum duration of 2 years, the 90% pass level. Plant test, the earthworm test is required. It came back from the old DIN standard, which I mentioned earlier, and the nitrification test for microorganisms. It also came back from the old German standard. So everything is coming back after 20 years. And for mulching films as products, also mechanical tests are performed, like opacity, length tests, because sometimes people sell you 40K mulching films and only 20K are on the roads. Things like that, so it's product safety as well. Sorry. Here you can see an overview about all the existing standards in the field. Depending on industrial, home composting, soil, or the respective additive certifications, we certify additives like printing inks, master batches, glues, adhesives, processing agents, colorants, etc. Pigments. We will also certify these additives as well for their use, for their harmless use in industrial or home compostable products as well. As I mentioned, we also do some certification and commission. Since 2017, we are the technical reviewer for BPI, for the North American Compostability logo. This certification system is performed according to the ASTM standards 6400 and 6868. And since 2014, we are also the technical reviewer for the ABA in Australia to certify for the ABA certification systems for industrial and home composting, which you can see the logos in the top, in the bottom right. So if you want to get certified around the globe, come to us. We can help you. Now the political part. I think that's a little bit more interesting, like the standards. In Europe, the EN 1342 standard is part of the European Packaging and Packaging Waste Directive since 1996. The standard applies to be suitable for organic recovery, like composting or anaerobic digestion of the products which apply for that, or which meet that scope. And it's part of the market access requirements of these products in the European Free Trade Zone. This means if you want to sell these products in Europe, being industrially compostable, you must comply with this standard by test report or by a valid certification system. In the 2015 version of the Packaging and Packaging Waste Directive, the European Commission was asked to ask the European standardization body ZEN for a separate home compostable standard. This standard is currently developed in the ZEN Technical Committee 261 SC4 Working Group 2. We started in the development in 2017, and luckily I'm the convener of that working group. And so this directive from 2015 brought out a report, which is also interesting, the impact of use of oxo-degradable plastics on the environment, which was released in 2017. And the European Commission started analyzing in 2017 the study, and they are still analyzing. So what was the goal of this packaging waste directive? And the goal was to reduce so-called lightweight plastic carrier bags with a thickness of less than 50 microns in the member states from 90 bags per capita in 2019 to 40 bags in 2025. No free bags should be given at stores below 50 microns if other means are not applicable, and bags below 15 microns can be excluded from national measures. 15 microns because they're used at, for example, fresh food, cheese, meat, etc., which is packed, which is single packaging for that. This is why it was excluded. These national measures can be applied with taxes, national goals, or other standards. Here you can see some of those national measures. In Germany, 80% of all the plastic carrier bags are not given out for free, except if they are below 15 microns for given reasons. In the German green bin, only waste bags are allowed if they are certified against EN 1342 or EN 14995, which is the plastic standard for that. And they must be produced predominantly from renewable resources, which is, they don't say they need to be bio-based, more than 50% certified, but made from. It's a big discussion between, let's say, German composters and the industry, how these bags are handled. In the Netherlands, from January 1st, 2016, free plastic bags are banned, and they also allow packaging and bags that complies with EN 13442 that they may be disposed in the green bin. If that packaging is food packaging and it's certified, it's allowed to be disposed in the green bin in Holland. In France, they also banned the lightweight plastic carrier bags, and they introduced their French home composting standard, which I mentioned earlier, that these bags must be certified against that standard and must feature a minimum bio-based level of 30%, which will increase in the next couple of years up to 60% in 2025. In Italy, most of the plastic bags are banned below 100 microns, even shopping bags. The exemptions are biodegradable and compostable carrier bags and waste bags, which are certified against EN 1332. And there is something special in Italy. They have a separate domestic certification system. They purchase or bought an industrial scale composting plant, and they take the certified product and test it again. And if you fail that test, you cannot sell your bags. Also, in Italy, lightweight packaging bags are banned, and they also must comprise a minimum bio-based content increasing in the next couple of years. The European Fertilizers Regulation, the European Parliament, in the end of 2017, they voted on the revision of that fertilizer regulation, and they approved it. And they recommend the standard EN 7033 for biodegradable mulching films for increasing the yield and to prevent litter. So this is also something political which is going on, that the mulching films, shopping bags, etc. shall be biodegradable with an increasing level and with defined requirements. In Europe, everything is very, let's say, restricted, political, 28 member states are discussing, things like that. And as I mentioned earlier, the toxicity requirements of this EN standard are similar to the old DIN standard from 1990s. Everything is coming back. Well, how are these products handled in reality? If products are tested or certified against a certain thickness, like 1000 microns, it is established that the same product with lower thickness is also compostable. That's pretty obvious. Of course, if this tested thickness is increased and exceeding the tested thickness as we have certified, the product needs to be tested again. This is a big discussion with the composters. They don't know if the shopping bag is 100 microns or 80 microns, if it's certified up to 100, or if it's 120, or if it's 50, or whatsoever. So this is where the certification systems come into place, where the applied thickness is part of the data mentioned in our database, which we find the products in. So you know, if you have a drinking cup or a lid, you know the thickness which is certified or tested. You can find it in our database. This information is given from European Bioplastics, from one of their fact sheets, by the way. You can find it also on their website. Screening systems to sort waste out of the composting plants to remove possible contaminants. There are two basic situations. Some composting plants do not screen the incoming bio-waste. They don't sort things out, but send it directly to composting. Most of them do shredding before, because the materials are pretty big, you don't know what's coming in, and to reduce the grain size. And the finished compost is sieved at the end. Some plants are equipped with screening systems, which are mostly sieving, at the front end of the plant, designed with the aim to exclude the contaminants before composting takes place. Also, among them plastics, but also stones, glass, whatsoever. Since these composting plants do not physically behave differently from traditional non-composting plastics, do not behave differently, the screening systems can exclude the composting plastics from the composting process. But some of these following points need to be considered, because most of these plants do not know, is it PE, is it PLA, whatever plastic it is it certified, is it not certified? So you have some also processing spectroscopic means or methods like X-ray, photoelectron spectroscopy, FTIR, things like that, which you can put into the management process of that plant to sort the plastics out. In many facilities, the materials that have been sieved out undergo a second stage of manual sorting. That's one of the possibilities to have. In that case, compostable items provided with a well recognized pattern, for example, logo or printing scheme, can be correctly identified by the trained staff. And that's the point, trained staff. You need additional staff to do that. In some facilities, contamination is still an issue, depending on the contamination rate, efficiency, and intensity of the pre-screening are still found, parts of the plastic contaminants are still found in the composted material. That's a problem. If the compost is not pure enough, you can sell it. And in Germany, we have, for example, a restriction of contaminants in compost. The maximum pollution is 0.5%. 0.4% of that is stone, glass, metals. And 0.1%, that's interesting wording, is non-degraded plastic. It's not degradable plastic, it's not plastic, it's non-degraded plastic. But if you know the density of plastic compared with the density of compost, 0.1% is pretty much volume. We've discussed that. So these plastics, if they're not compostable or biodegradable, could be replaced and could help to solve those problems. The processing times and the use of compost of different maturity levels is also a problem with different kinds of facilities. Usually compost is used after having undergone both the active composting and the subsequent curing phase. The modern composting facilities also have an anaerobic digestion in the first place. And after that, they undergo composting. But it depends on the composting facility, how it's built up. Sometimes compost is used before reaching full maturity, like fresh composting plants. They do only compost about 1 to 2 weeks. The compost is not mature. If you use wet compost, it behaves differently with compostable plastics like mature compost is doing. In this case, the compost is obtained after seeding, while the oversize is generally put back into the process. So it's a continual cycling process and recycling process of these composting materials. So in that case, certified compostable plastics that not completely disintegrated are also intercepted by the final seeding and recycled back into the composting process. So after 2 or 3 recycling processes, these plastics are gone, or can be gone, depending on the facility. So what are the benefits? The benefits are better acceptance and higher participation in bio-waste collection. This is interesting because the new Packaging and Packaging Waste Directive in Europe from 2018 included organics recycling into the recycling quota. First time. So that means anaerobic digestion and industrial composting is now also part of the recycling quota of the European Union and part of the recycling quota goals of the member states. It's a possibility to communicate to the public environmental messages, but also B2B, B2C, of course, within the value chain, to use these logos and the respective established certification systems with their background I mentioned earlier. It could reduce the contamination by non-compostable plastics in the organic waste composting facilities. There's a decreased need for intensive screening systems, if applicable, and the lower contamination of the final compost. And you can see some other arguments here on the right side, depending on your needs, lower gate fees for composting compared to landfilling or incineration, for example, the potential cost savings for municipalities delivering cleaner bio-waste to composting facilities, etc., etc. But there are also challenges. If you have an increase of the contamination of the organic feedstock when introducing this compostable plastic to the bio-waste collection and to the composting schemes, there's sometimes the danger of increasing contamination rates. In Germany, it depends on the local authorities and the municipalities if they accept compostable plastic bags, even the allowed one, in the green bin or not. So it's not centrally decided in Germany from the government, from the federal government. It's a decision on the local authorities if they accept the green bins or not. There are a lot of pilot projects in the last couple of years, like the Castle project, which show that the end consumer is accepting that if you teach the public to do so, to do the right things, they do the right things. But sometimes they do not. Yesterday I mentioned to Lou that they found a Bobby car in the green bin. That's not making sense, of course. And these are examples which are taken out again and again and again to prove that the system is not working. That's not true. Yeah, you can see on the right-hand side the lack of uniformity between waste management systems at local and national level is hindering the development of general policies and/or legislation that could promote the use of certified compostable plastics. In Germany, we have from the German Composting Council, there's a list of facility equipment with 9 different levels. So you can see from the very primitive piling up, windscreen composting facilities, up to high-end anaerobic digestion, industrial facilities doing fresh compost after 1 or 2 weeks. So the span of techniques is pretty wide. And sometimes you don't know which plastic works in which facility, good, bad, you don't know. So there's a need of further development on industrial composting infrastructure in many countries, and that's the problem we have with the international discussion. If it works in Berlin, if it works in Auckland, it doesn't need that it works in Rotterdam, New York, Chicago, we don't know. So here are some examples about composting types of plants and descriptions. There's an aerated static pile, ASP so-called composting. It's used in open or closed windrows or in containers. The benefits and setbacks of these are that in this case they are well aerated, show good results, but have very high costs. High fiber composting was recently developed in Wales, and it adds paper as feedstock to kitchen waste to balance the carbon-nitrogen value, but it needs to be mixed and aerated frequently because if you mix kitchen waste with paper, you know what happens. It's sticking together. So-called in-vessel composting, they use controlled vessels or tanks with external aeration. This works like a bioreactor or a batch reaction in that specific scale. It can also refer to aerated static pile composting, and the anaerobic reactions are prohibited by the CN ratio. There's mechanical biological treatment. This combines the respective sorting with biological treatment. So they first sort out metals, glass, etc. They split up the waste stream, which can form an integral part of the region's waste treatment infrastructure, because this sorted out metals, glass, etc. can be recycled anywhere else. So not landfilling it, it's one possibility, but you can also put that materials back into the material stream for recycling. So-called vermicomposting uses earthworms. Here come the earthworms from the earthworm tests. They use earthworms to treat that waste. This can be used for industrial and home composting scale, and it results in a lower salt content and a nutrient-rich fertilizer, which can use up in the end. If you're doing home composting in your backyard, you know, if you're piling up something, after 2 or 3 weeks, the earthworms are coming. And there's windrow composting, which is a very common one. It's a very useful one for, let's say, high amounts of compost. Most of them are just used, of course, outside with free landfill, piling it up with or without roof. It's suitable for large amounts. If you have composting plants, about 50 to 200,000 metric tons a year. So you can really have a high throughput of compost in these respective plants. But it needs also big machines to mix and aerate. If you have ever been at a composting exhibition, You can see those big cranes and whatsoever machines which are mixing up that compost. You cannot do that by hand. There's also high costs in the first place to implement that system. So as you can see here, there's a lot of possibilities depending on your local environment, about your local waste stream, what is making sense in your region, or what is not making sense in your region. Yes, a short, I think at the end. The current status of the standard development also. The CERTCO working group, which I mentioned earlier, where I'm the convener, is dealing with both the EN 13432 standard and the European Home Composting standard. We currently amend the list of approved metals, referring to the EU fertilizer regulation, and we want to update the test methods mentioned therein. The problem is this standard is harmonized within 28 member states, first, and it is listed at the European Commission, second. We require a mandate from the European Commission to amend it and to update the standards because it's part of the market access needs. So it's very difficult, but we are working on that. The European Home Composting standard is in principle based on the French and Australian standard. It adds the earthworm test and the nitrification test, which we discussed earlier. And the problem so far, the new working item proposal is currently developed, but we don't have a mandate yet as well. So it's a political decision, as you can see. Even standards are political. So this one we know. Thank you very much for your attention.